What makes you happy?
Be yourself, be positive. Just another mindset.
Hello, friends, and welcome to a new episode of the Just Another Mindset podcast, the show that inspires you to change and live a more exciting life. My name is Ismael, and each week I bring to you a relevant conversation, message, or topic that will not only entertain you, but help you to change towards a more meaningful and satisfying life, individually and collectively. Let us get inspired and embrace collective changes for the better. Transforming 10 million lives, one life at a time. That is the mission of Scott Allan, a best-selling author. And with his books published in 6 languages and over 200,000 copies sold worldwide, Scott is on a mission to transform the human potential. In today's episode, I have the great opportunity to get an in-depth interview with Scott, and you will learn why fiction and self-development are so closely connected. Scott is the best-selling author of more than 20 self-development books, and you will further learn how he takes decisions and acts on them. We discuss the power of journaling, meditation, and breathing, and we elaborate on the benefit of structure during the day. Scott shares his success stories from doing the hard things first, and we discuss how to identify and eliminate limiting beliefs. We talk about goal setting, and we talk about listening to your intuition and where this trust can eventually lead you. And with talking about trust, I have a personal request for you. If you do in fact like and enjoy the conversation that you listen to today, please make sure to let Scott and myself know about it. Take a screenshot of the episode wherever you listen to it and share it with a friend or two. And make sure to tag Scott and myself so that we know that you're listening. If you enjoy the conversation, make sure to subscribe on YouTube and on Spotify or Apple Podcast. And if you really enjoy the podcast episode from today, make sure to send us a message and telling us what resonated most with you and whether or not you have potential questions for a round 2 with Scott. I wish you a wonderful day and happy sharing. And with that, a warm welcome to the Just Another Mindset podcast. And my first question for you would be, how do you feel today and what is on your mind?
Well, I feel fantastic. It's great to be here. It's been a while since I've done an interview, so really looking forward to speaking with you today. I always have a lot to say, so feel free to ask me anything.
Wonderful. I will do. Make sure to do so, Scott. And maybe we can give a little bit of a context for our audience today. And you are an author and you've self-published quite a few books in the realms of self-development. And my first question for you would be, when and why did you start writing books?
Okay, great question. My passion with books probably started way back when I was in elementary school and junior high school. And I won't give you a wide history lesson on that, but I just loved reading. I fell in love with books, started reading Stephen King when I was probably like 11 or 12 years old and just became really engaged with storytelling. And what I loved about storytelling is just the imagination behind it. Like you could write a story, you could step into into a character, into a story and become anybody, become anything. And that started me down this path where I actually started out as a fiction author, again, many years ago, but I loved the idea that you could create a world that was all your own. And I think that from those early days when I, decided that I wanted to, from those early days, I decided I wanted to become that kind of person who was able to take control of their destiny. And that's something we can get into maybe more later on. But I more or less led my entire life with that belief that, You're not confined to your reality, to your reality or to your environment. That you can become anything you want to be if you truly believe that you are the one who's in control of your own destiny. And there are a lot more dynamics behind that, but I'll just circle back to becoming an author. I did start writing at an early age. I took probably a 20-year hiatus where I didn't really write anything, but the drive, like that internal drive of wanting to become an author, never left me. And I had a long career as an electrical engineer. I spent 25 years in Japan. I built a business here. I was teaching for a long time, but I always knew that writing was the one thing that I absolutely had to do. So probably picked it up again about 15 years ago. And I think there was a double question there with the personal development and self-development material. The reason I started publishing this material and not fiction, and I have a lot of fiction books I've written and haven't published, but I've always had a passion for personal growth. Like I just had this, hunger for knowledge, for transformation, and the one thing that is driving me is to become better than myself today than I was yesterday. And that's just like, whenever I would read these personal development books, for example, Tony Robbins, Awaken the Giant Within, and could be Brendan Burchard and, Wayne Dyer. There's just a whole bunch of leaders in that industry that I just really, really admired. And every time I read their material or if I, listened to the podcast, I learned something. And I was able to take that, implement it in my own life. And, whenever you take action on something, you get a result. And that result is, it's not always, it's not like a positive or a negative thing. It's just you get a result or an outcome. And if it isn't the outcome you wanted, you just try a different direction. So what I loved about personal development is that I realized, this was something that I could control, because if I can master my mind, master my heart, master my circumstances, then anything is possible. And a lot of my beliefs just came from that. Was why I started writing these kinds of books. Was just it's just it was like a compulsion. It was just a compelling drive to create something. Not that it was just, I didn't want to do it just for myself. I wanted to share this with other people because I believe that there was something in me that was just dying to break out, and I couldn't just keep it inside anymore. So that's the story in kind of in a short nutshell there. But it started with one idea, and over the course of, I guess, a decade, maybe 15 years later, instead of dying out, it's probably gotten stronger. And so, yeah, I don't know if that answered your question, but
it certainly did. It certainly did. Thank you very much, Scott, for that elaboration. And we're going to look into some of those actions and some of those thoughts and some of those self-development techniques, I want to call them, in a bit. But before we go there, when you were talking, I found it super interesting that you used fiction also as an entry door. And from what I understand you saying is that you also use fiction, or that you use elements of fiction to create a world that you believe in yourself, that you understand that you can do it. So maybe you can talk to that a little bit. How is that fiction and the self-development work, even though there may not look like having too much overlap, but in your work, I understand they do to a certain extent.
Right. So a lot of the fiction, if you look at a lot of the famous stories, whether it be Star Wars or Harry Potter, or a lot of the stories, they revolve around the hero's journey, and that was the starting point. When I started to create fiction, I wasn't even aware of what the hero's journey was. And if anybody's familiar with Joseph Campbell and you've read The Hero with a Thousand Faces, it was just like that was just just a mind blowing dive into that whole that whole concept is just amazing. So anyway, when I started to put my stories together, I realized that a lot of the characters I was developing had certain traits of not, yeah, of course, as a writer, you always have those certain traits you embed into your characters, but it's also the traits of the people that are surrounding you, right? So the hero's journey, the hero is always surrounded by um, friends and foe, right? So people on the journey, and if I can use an example, would be Lord of the Rings. The Fellowship when they get together and they're, Frodo's the main character, but it's not just his journey. Everyone's on the journey together, and each of them are experiencing that journey individually, but also as a group. And just became fascinated by that because realized that, well, if I can create this in a story, well, how is that any different than being able to create it in real life? And that was when I realized that um, there's a huge overlap between what we see as imagination and what we actually see as reality. They're not that. I don't think they're any different. It's just, and in fact, if you want to create a compelling future, if you want to live your dreams, if you want to, achieve a goal in the future, you have to build it first in your mind. You have to build that vision. You have to build the imagination, because that is going to it's going to put the steps in place. And pretty soon, next thing you know, synchronistically, things start showing up, and you start meeting the people that you have to meet in order to get to that next level that you want to get to. So fiction and or nonfiction, or fiction and reality, it's all one thing really, because I look at it as if we're all here living our lives, doing our thing every day, and we call this reality, but your reality is it's I think it's an imprint of everything that you've imagined, visualized, and believed up to this point. So
Absolutely. No, definitely. Thank you very much. And I think there is a strong correlation of fiction, self-development, and in the end, it's our own reality that we create, that we believe to experience. And maybe, Scott, you can talk a little bit to that if you want, how writing has helped yourself to create more focus or gain more confidence or to gain a better path of life, a better vision for your life. You choose either of those components, and then we can see where that takes us.
sure, yeah, yeah. I think everybody is born to do something, and maybe that's not just one thing, right? Maybe you've had 3 or 4 careers, and maybe your career is not the thing that you want to do, but there is that one thing that we're all really, really good at. And for me, it just felt, it's like it was a natural. I don't know if it was a natural talent, but I just felt at peace when I was writing. It just felt like such a natural thing to do. And I coach a lot of writers actually, and that's one of the things I do is I coach a lot of authors in writing techniques, how to write and publish. And I realized that and a lot of them struggle, and so did I in the beginning, and there are still struggles, but it just feels very natural to me when I'm putting pen to paper or typing something out. And to be honest, I can't type very well. I always joke about that because I've published 20 plus books, and I've typed them all with 2 fingers, right? Um, but again, it was just like, it has to be done somehow. I could always put speech to text and have it, do it that way. But just as a writer, I felt like I always had to be doing something like creative, and it's just that creativity that I really just craved. And anybody who is you don't have to be an artist to be creative. I think we're all creative. It's just that we tend to bury it at some place along the journey. It just gets steamrolled over because we get into I don't know, well, we get into education, and then education trains us to get a job, and then from there, if you did have a dream, you've probably forgotten about that by now, because now you're on a different path. And you've really got to be intentional about the future you want to create in order to live that future. Like, it's not going to just happen or materialize. Now, the future is coming for everybody. I mean, it's in the next 5 minutes, the next day, in the next year. That's inevitable. But the question is it going to be the future that you really want? And I found that in when I was putting together the concepts for a lot of these books, um, the question that I always ask myself is, what is the journey that I want to take the readers on? Because I see myself as somebody who's capable of doing that, but I don't have all the answers either. So it's like we're going to take this journey together. I don't know where it's going to lead to, but we need to take the first few steps, and then we're just going to going to make it up as we go along. So when I do writing, like when I put together the concepts for a book, there is that I begin with the end in mind, but it doesn't mean that once you arrive at the end, then that's it and it's over. It's just that you've reached the next level, you've reached the next stage, right? And there's always another stage. So and that's the thing with our, like, as humans, with our personal growth. Well, you have the fixed mindset and the growth mindset. And, if you're living in a fixed mindset with a lot of scarcity and fear and disbelief, um, well, chances are you're probably stuck in a place that's, I can only imagine, is very painful, because it was very painful for me. And we all exist there at some point. And part of us, like, I think always does. But then you have the growth mindset. And if you can make that shift from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset, well, now you're setting things in motion. Like, when you start to make a conscious decision that you no longer want to stay stuck in the place that you're in, because you believe that there's something bigger out there, bigger than yourself, bigger than, that's where you really start to gain momentum. Like, momentum is really powerful once you start to become conscious of that. And I think that's part of the work that I am doing, is trying to awaken that. I don't know. I have a term for it. It's like awakening the beast. It's like you need to wake yourself up, and there are techniques for that. I mean, of course, there's meditation and there's visualization techniques and these things, but you really have to work at it. Because you may have been asleep for a long time, and we're all asleep to a certain extent. I mean, I think that's all part of the awakening process. Is that if you want to wake up and get moving, you have to let go of the past to a certain extent. I mean, not saying that we need to just forget about everything that happened, but we don't have to continue clinging to it either. And I think that's where a lot of us get stuck, is like we're clinging to everything that we've always done and the failures we've always had, and that becomes our future, because that was our past. So when you're living in the past and you're reliving that every day, those thoughts, and thinking about the regrets you have, and all the things you didn't do, well, you're bringing that forward into the present, and that's actually going to continue forward into the future too, because you're building those expectations.
I would be very interested in this awakening, or if you want to call it this transitioning from a fixed mindset to a growth mindset. And maybe you can give your personal example. Do you understand that your earlier career or earlier careers prepared you for the journey that you are now onto? Would be one question. And another question could be, to which extent or when did you decide to take the leap and to follow your calling, I want to call it? And how did you decide to do so? I'm assuming, based on your books, that you are a fairly structured person. Did you have a list that you wrote down, okay, I sense something, I feel something, and it happened over time? Or how did you waken up yourself, to use your terminology here?
I'm going to go back a few years, actually, to a decision that I made one day. So when I finished college, which was a while ago, it was like probably about 30 years ago. I finished college, and at the time I was living at home still, kind of looking for a job. I was living in a small town, so I'm from Canada. I came from a small town there, very quaint, very beautiful. I had a job, and I was in love, and I had all these things going for me, and I thought, wow, this is it. I've got it made. Only I wasn't. Something inside me just was very restless. It was like this restless feeling that I had to do something, and I made a decision. probably just after I finished college, that I looked at, do I want to, okay, I could stay in the small town, I can get a job and just, have a nice little house on the beach and maybe a little garden and all these things. And that's very appealing. But something in me just said, no, no, that's not what we're doing. You're going to get on a plane, and in about 3 months, you're going to go out west where, and you're going to start your life out there. And I can't remember if it was a dream I had or if it was something, just it was a feeling like. And to this day, I still can't remember at the very exact moment when I made that decision. No, I do remember when I made it. I was just standing on the beach one day, thinking, what am I going to do with the rest of my life? And it wasn't even it was like a question, but it was almost like the answer was just there. It's like, I need to go, and I need to get on a plane, go out west, and start something new. It was a decision, and once I made the decision, nothing broke that decision. Like, it was done. Friends were like, what are you going to do out there? You don't actually know anybody. I had a best friend that lived out there, and that was it. But I was really just going from one place to another, and it wasn't scary at all. It was very exciting. So that's how I knew it was the right decision. So anyway, long story short, I went out west. I went from Nova Scotia. I lived in Halifax at the time. I went from Nova Scotia to Vancouver. I got there, started a new life, and it was great. It was just had a great time out there. 6 years later, I was in the same position, where I felt like I'd done enough, and I was just hungry for more. Like that growth mindset, like something inside me just said, you've got to, you've got to do something, and we've got to take action, and I've got to create something new, like a new life. And I was like, yeah, that's right. So kind of like having this conversation with myself, or was it? But here's the thing. One day I'm in the bookstore, and at the time, by the way, like I actually, at that time, and going back maybe 25 years just before I came to Japan, I was going through this period where I just started reading self-help books and getting into, because I was going through a lot of recovery at the time, and emotional trauma, and I started reading books by like Tony Robbins and Wayne Dyer, etc. And one day I'm in the bookstore, and I see this book on the bookshelf. It's just like I was just walking by, and there it is. And it was Tony Robbins' book, Awaken the Giant Within. I thought, wow, great. Okay, you know what? I'm going to buy that book. Like, something just said, you got to get that book. And I did. Went home. And there's a chapter in the book on creating compelling goals, right? And I'd never created goals before, really. So I sat down, and within a couple of hours, I had mapped out a whole blueprint of goals. And there were 3 goals on my list. One was to go traveling around the world, which I'd never done before because I'd actually never been anywhere. 2 was to become an author. And I think the 3rd one was just to live a life of freedom. And like, for me, if I could do those first 2 things, I could have the 3rd thing. All right. So I made a decision right there. Like, on that day, I made a decision. I was going to leave, and I was going to go to Asia. Didn't know where I was going to go. Didn't have any money. I was single at the time, so I wasn't tied down with anything. But I just spent the next year planning my trip right to Asia. And, I was telling all my friends about it, and people, and they're like, oh, that sounds interesting. I said I was going to go to Thailand and Indonesia and do this and that. And, my roommate would come home from work, and I'd be sprawled out on the living room floor with all these language books on Thai and Vietnamese, and practicing all these languages. So my point to this is that making that decision led me to start to actually build that reality before it was even there, because I just immersed myself in the belief that I was going to go do this thing. And I would just visualize day after day after day of like traveling to these exotic countries, riding elephants, and just doing all this stuff that I'd never done before. And I became consumed by this vision. Anyway, 6 months later, I'm going through the newspaper, and I just see this right in front of me. I just actually opened it up. There's this ad in the paper, and this is before internet, by the way. There's this ad in the paper says, teach English in Japan. I thought, what a great idea. And so I said, yeah, sure. And I remember typing up a resume on a computer. Never even used a computer before. This is like back in 96 and 97. And so I typed up this, my resume, sent it off. And 30 days later, they contacted me and said, we want to meet you. And I, this And this business person from Japan flew to Vancouver, and I had this interview. And next thing I knew, boom, I was on my way to Japan. So this is leading into like synchronistic events. When you make a decision and you start to take action on that decision, that momentum is going to put things in your place. People are going to come into your life. Events are going to happen. You can call them coincidences, but there's a like, very powerful intuition there that's at work. And what if I hadn't been looking at the paper that day? What if I've been doing something else? Or if I hadn't made that decision, well, I would have ignored that anyway, because I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay here. But because I knew what I wanted, every time something like that happened, I was like, yes, that's, that was like a lottery ticket, right? So, but anyway, I got the job, and 6 months later, I was on a plane bound for here, and all those things that I visualized doing, like going to other countries and speaking other languages, I did them all, right? But it only happened because, it started one day with an idea, and the idea led into a belief. The belief became a decision, and the decision became a life that I'd always dreamed of living. So.
Is this trust, this belief that things will happen if you only push yourself, something that came innate for you, or is it something that you grew over time while following your instincts and while listening to this calling?
There's certainly something at work underneath all the surface of everything. I mean, I think there's a calling in all of us. And I think going back to the hero's journey, that's really what a lot of that's about, is like, answering to that calling, right? Now, everybody has it. I believe everybody has it. And you may not awaken to it in this lifetime. I don't know. It could be 5 lifetimes from now, but it is there. And I was just very aware of it, like at a very young age. And why, I can't honestly say, like how that came about. But it was just a knowing. Like it was when I first made the decision to move from the east to the west, and because again, I'd never been on an airplane before, and I wasn't going anywhere, so I had a great life. But this calling that was deep inside of me was just like, nope, we can't do that. We're leaving. And there's just like a knowing, like it wasn't even, I didn't stew over the decision. It wasn't like going back and forth. It was like, yep, I'm leaving. I even decided the date, and that was it. It was rock solid.
Now, and that would lead me to the follow-up question, like, did you question your decisions, or do you still question your decisions? Or is it for you rock solid? Like, I'm going to Japan on the 1st of April that year, and then you just take that decision and then you build everything around that decision?
Yeah, it started with a rock solid decision of like, I'm going to my plan was actually to probably go to Thailand or someplace like that. Again, it sounded like a, crazy dream because, I don't know, there was no real plan behind it. It was just a decision that I'm going to make the decision, and then we'll see what happens from there. Right. But things did fall into place, and, it's not like a perfect plan where you can sit down and map everything out. Like I said, there were things that obviously things would crop up, or I'd meet somebody on the street and start talking, and they would like give me some information about something, right? And then the next day I'd meet somebody else, and it was like a combination of meeting people who are just feeding me, these nuggets of information, and then taking action on them. So, yeah, it just I remember just the last thing too is like my apartment at the time. I think on the walls, like I had like a lot of rock posters and stuff like that. And when I started on this journey, like when I decided I'm going to go and do this and do these things, like I'm going to travel the world. Well, within a week, I created this. I think you probably heard of like these the dream collage, or I did like a mind map on the wall of like pictures of all the places I was going to go. And me and my friends would come over. They're like, what's going on here? What are you building? It's like, and it's like, well, I'm going here, and yeah, I mean, so, people are just like, well, that's cool, great. I hope it works out for you. But it's almost like I just, anything that you want to create, I mean, you've got to have that it's not just a vision in your mind. You've got to have it spread out. Sometimes, you got to wake up with it. It's gotta be right there so you can see it before you go to work. And, because you're going to go to work and you're going to get bombarded with a lot of things there, and people are going to be sharing their problems with you and their self-doubts. And, in our day to day, we get bogged down with a lot of like, I don't know, negativity sometimes, and other people's problems, our own problems, and that just becomes our life, like that, reacting to everything, right? So to build this thing, like, there's a level of proactivity that you need. Like, you've got to be really proactive in your own life. I mean, other people are going to do what they're going to do, and you can try to help them, help each other. But once that decision is made that I'm going to write a book, or I'm going to go here and do this thing, or I'm going to go get a new job, I don't know, whatever it is, nothing's going to get between where I'm at and where I got to get to in order to achieve that. So.
No, thank you. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And I think this visualization is something that really, really does help. And I would be very interested for myself, writing down and reflecting on myself. Writing down thoughts also really does help. And then I can still decide to act upon them, or to decide that this is a thought which might not be included into my decision-making process. Do you also practice something if you have a thought? I don't know, there's different people having different techniques. Do we always have a notebook with yourself where you can take a note, or do you have like a digital version of some? How do you bring those thoughts into life before really bringing them into life, meaning working on them?
Yeah, so I do a lot of journaling as well. I think journaling is a great exercise. If anybody's ever read The Artist's Way, I would definitely recommend that book. And Julie Cameron, like, that was where I got the idea of like journaling and writing 3 pages a day. I don't do it every day, but when I'm really focused on journaling, like, that's a very powerful exercise. So I'll do that maybe 3 or 4 times a week. There's that's part of it. But the other part of it is, everybody knows what meditation is, but I think the term meditation is just misconstrued a lot. For me, it's not just like sitting down and quieting your mind. My goal is not to quiet my mind. My goal with meditation, which I think I refer to as creative meditation or visual meditation, is really, when I'm meditating, I'm actually visualizing the compelling future that I want to be living, right? So, and there are times when, you sit down and you try to get quiet with yourself, and you start thinking about your problems and things that happened that day, and fearful thoughts come in, and what am I going to do? And that's all fine, because you do have to connect with yourself and look inside yourself to see what's going on in there. But the breathing is really powerful, not just for stress, but it actually controls your mind, but it also controls your reflexes, and makes you it just brings everything down. Like, in our day to day, because everybody's got a lot of challenges, and people get angry. We react, and we get impatient. And I found that whenever I just breathe and I stay in the moment, everything around me is just, I could have people running around me in chaos trying to put things together, and I could be in the center of that room just as quiet as anything, and somehow everything gets pieced together. So I've got a lot of examples around that. I'm probably not making sense with this explanation, but one of the practices that I would highly recommend to anybody, and this is something I do 3 times a day for at least 15 minutes. Early in the morning, first thing in the morning, because when you wake up in the morning, that's when your thoughts, everything is like most volatile and vulnerable. And when you wake up first thing in the morning, like I do a bit of stretching, right? But then I just drink some water, sit myself down for 15 minutes. I'll just put a timer on and start by breathing. And then I start visualizing how I want the day to go. It doesn't mean it's going to go that way, but I mean, I need to think that, these are the things that I want to feel and experience. These are the people that I want to help. And doing that just takes your energy. Of course, it creates positive energy, but it takes, it cuts away the past energy, the negative energy from the past, and it just brings everything into the present moment. And from there, you can move forward into creating, like that future for yourself. That future might be just for today. Like, it doesn't have to be something 10 years from now, but I start to visualize the dreams that I want to create, not just for myself, but for everybody around me. And I visualize, like the people in my life, and how, like, by achieving this thing, because it's not all about me, but by achieving this thing, I can actually help one person, 5 people, hundreds of other people, to believe in themselves, believe in what they're doing too. And if I can create something like that, like I think that's where the real power is. Like that's, to me, that's what power really is. Like that's the power of influence. It's not the power of like controlling over, like having control over people. It's teaching them how to have control over themselves, while also like you have yourself to think about as well, right? But the thing is that you have to feel that within yourself, I think, before you can reach out and help other people too. So yeah, like there's a lot of dynamics there, but it doesn't have to be as complicated as we make it out to be. The biggest challenge is that most people are afraid to be with themselves for more than 10 minutes or 30 minutes. It's I get it. It's a bit scary, but that's what you need to do, right? And scheduling that time in, like I'll just schedule in time blocks. Like I know, like every day, 3 times a day, I need to do this. And on the days when I don't do it, when I don't have that creative when I don't perform that creative visualization process, um, I'm just reacting to everything.
And I would really much like to use that and look a little bit into, really the structure and the habits that you have during I don't know if there's something like a typical day, but during a day, you said like 3 times a day you have this meditation, vision, and then acting phase. And you already talk about scheduling time. How does Scott work? Do you wake up always the same time in the morning? No, then this is the time for this. Have 4 hours of focus time, then have your next focus. How does it work? How does it map out? And how do you plan and structure your days? Would be very interesting.
Yeah. So sometimes these things are difficult to build into your day, especially if everybody probably is, like, a lot of people are at work, they have a lot going on with family, things like that. So I have certain goals that I have to hit every day. And I'll call them goals or activities that I need to engage in. They don't necessarily have to happen at the same time every day, because that's really hard to plan for. But in the morning, and everybody's probably heard of a morning routine, and like having a morning ritual, and I'm actually writing a book on it right now. But that morning hour, like that first hour, this is why I do wake up really early. By the way, to your question, I get up around 4 to 4:30. I know that sounds really early, and a lot of people are like, well, I'm not really an early bird. I actually stay awake late at night, and I do too. I actually am more of a night person than an like an early morning person. But it's something that I've had to build that habit over time. So sometimes I'll get up at 5 a.m. But the thing is, like, I will get up early, and before I wake up, every night before I go to sleep, actually I'll take 5 or maybe 10 minutes at the most, just map out what I'm going to do the next day. And a lot of the things that the things that are on my list are really like that morning. I call it like the morning power hour, or that morning hour you have with yourself. It doesn't have to be making me 30 minutes, but you got to take that time intentionally, and apply it. So that is when you do your meditation for, it could be 10 or 15 minutes. Again, really, that's just deep breathing and creatively imagining how you want your day to go. And your thoughts are not always going to be, it's not going to be like you're going to achieve this moment of clarity like every morning. Some days, we wake up, and if we had a hard day the day before, your mind could just be scrambling with a lot of stuff inside it. But that's why sleep is super important. So trying to get to bed at a decent hour, but getting in that 6 to 8 hours sleep. And some days it's 4 to 5 hours. And everybody's probably heard the importance of sleep. Well, if you don't have a very good sleep, then the next day your performance is really going to impact your performance the next day. But anyway, I'm just going to circle back to that morning routine that I have is 15 minutes of creative visualization, drinking water, like I'll drink a bottle of water, and do some 10 or 15 minutes of exercise. And the exercise can just be some light yoga. You don't have to go hard on the weights right away, but stretching yoga, these things are, it gets the body moving, and that's what you really need. And it's okay to get up and do the yoga first, start moving at first, and then you can sit down afterwards and, just spend the last 15 minutes of that getting calm and start to visualize how, you want things to go. What are your goals, right? After I do that, I'll take 5 minutes to write out my goals, maybe for the week, maybe just my goals for the year. But that's something that if you're going to do journaling, I recommend, I know some people who write their goals down every morning. Like they have 3 goals that they want to achieve and they just write them out within like in 5 minutes, they're done. Right. But that keeps things on point, like you're not going to forget about that. If it's like a habit, if you keep doing that every day, especially in the morning, you're setting the pace for the rest of the day. And it's so impactful, like just on the quality of your life. And I think just lastly, like that's the thing, like doing all of this, it all comes back to living a quality lifestyle, building a quality lifestyle, and I can just assume everybody wants to have a quality life. Well, you need to be intentional about that, and just follow, building out that routine is critical. And this is coming from somebody who's always struggled with building routines. That's why I wrote a book on procrastination for that reason, because I'm actually a chronic procrastinator. I fight against routine and rules and things like that and habits, but which makes things a lot harder to achieve, to manage. But it really is just being very consistent with your actions. And, if you can make it a goal for yourself to, it's like working out, right? If you decide you're going to work out 5 days a week, well, it doesn't have to be at the same time every day, but as long as it gets done, that's what matters, right? So anyway, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
No, I suppose, thank you very much, that it can also help to write about a book that you want to work on yourself and improve yourself, right? So if you want to improve your procrastination or you work onto your own routines, I suppose it can help a lot to do a lot of research about the benefits and how to do that and how to implement that. So that's very interesting. Thank you very much, Scott. A follow-up question that came to mind when you were talking is, okay, you have a certain morning structure, and you could decide what that really means, but how many critical tasks do you plan for one day, or how many important priority tasks would you have in one particular day?
That's a good question. Yeah. So I have on my right here, I've got a big board on the wall, and on this wall I have 6 priority tasks that I have every day. These tasks are actionable, achievable, and they're actionable, and they're actually very action driven. So like there's an outcome to it, right? So, for example, one of my goals every day is write 1,000 words, right? Because I know if I do that every day for 30 to 45 days, I'm going to have a book written. So one of my priority task is not to write a book, right? That's the goal. But I break it down into smaller, like priority actions that are measurable. They're measurable goals that you can achieve at the end of the day. And I've said 6, but that's actually, to be honest, I don't always finish all 6 of those priority tasks. Most days I might do 3. So the other 3 that didn't get finished will go on to the next day, right? So, but these are the I think they're the MITs. They're like the most important things that need to get done, and these may be related to my author business, to our publishing business, but they can also be things that are related to maybe related to family, or maybe it could be something you've been putting off for a long time, which just brings me back to the one thing on the list. One of the priority tasks is always the thing that is the hardest thing for me to do that I've been procrastinating on, which is why I wrote a book called Do the Hard Things First, because it's really about doing that first thing every day that you don't want to do. And I still struggle with it, right? Writing a book doesn't, you still struggle with these things, even though maybe I've written a book on it, but I also have to practice it just like everybody else, right? So on the days when I can do that one thing, even if I don't get the other 5 things done, just getting that one thing finished, immediately just a boost in confidence. You feel fulfilled, right? It's scary at first when you're doing it. It's like, I didn't really want to write this email, or I didn't want to really, didn't really want to work out today, but you get it done. And anybody who knows, like if you procrastinated on something for a long time, then you finally do it. It's like, wow, that actually wasn't as bad as I thought. And you realize you put more energy into putting it off than you actually did in doing that one thing, So anyway, out of those priority tasks that I commit to every day, one of them is a very hard thing that I need to do. And just to note, I don't always do the hard thing every morning. Some days it's like, well, I'm going to actually do these other couple of things and I'll do the hard thing later. And it doesn't always get done, but it stays on the list. That's the thing. Like it stays there and doesn't get thrown away, because I want to look at it and say, like, okay, it's been there for a week. I should probably take care of it, because if I don't, I can't move on to the next thing. Right. So, yeah.
I don't know if you want to talk to that, Scott, but maybe you can give a personal example of a hard thing that you solved or that you struggle to solve. I don't know if there's something that comes to mind that you want to talk about.
Sure. Yeah. I have a deep-seated fear of doing paperwork. All right. So I'll give you an example. So we all have documents and papers that we need to fill out for financial statements, taxes, you name it, right? There's a lot of that stuff. And let's be honest, like none of that's fun. But and of course we have to, I'm going to use the, filing taxes as an example. Okay. I'm sure there are a lot of people out there who put out their taxes until the last minute. I'm probably not the only one. I'll go out on a limb and just say I'm probably not the only one, but I've done this every year where I've actually waited until almost like the last week that I had to file it to actually start putting everything together. And when you have a year's worth of business documents, receipts, and everything that have been collected, but not printed out, not organized, and you wait until the last week, maybe even 2 weeks, even that put me into a position every year of just like a lot of pain at the end of the year, like at the end of the tax season. So, but throughout the year, I knew inside, like, okay, if I don't want to get caught at the end of the year, I should probably just print out my statements at the end of every month. That's a great idea, right? Well, then the end of the month comes around and you're into the next month and the next month. And it just became such a chronic habit of pushing everything off and avoiding those things. That's just one example, but the stress that it caused at the end of it is like, so I made a decision, like actually last year was my last year for that. And this year more organized, but it's still hard. Like it's hard to work on those forms and, submit those forms. And we don't really want to do those things because they're not fun. Well, it's also not fun when you get a big bill from like the tax department saying, well, you are late, so we're going to tax you more, because, that's not fun either, but that's the price that you pay for. And that's the price that I paid for putting these things off and not taking deliberate action on getting them done. It was never about not having enough time. It was never about it's not like I didn't know what to do. It was just that, tomorrow is a better time to do it than today, because today, it's just the timing's not right. But that really just becomes a habit of self-sabotage, right? So, yeah, but that's just one example. I mean, there's other examples of things that I put off indefinitely that to this day I still haven't done. But a lot of them they usually rotate around the same central theme of have a meeting with somebody. It's a meeting I don't want to have. Or it's a discussion I don't want to have. So I'm not going to have it. I'm just going to hope that it goes away. And these things never really go away, right? Even if they do and someone else ends up taking care of it, well, that's not really a good thing, because if you take care of it, well, you've just taken care of something that scared you. And when you do the things that scare you, and you get through them anyway, no matter what the outcome is, hey, you've just taken a big leap. Like you're just, you're feeling great about yourself. You did it scared, right? And that's really, I think, that's the goal. Like I think that's the goal, is to like just do it anyway, do it scared. Do the hard things first. I mean, this all sounds kind of like tough talk, but if you can do these things, then you're not going to be living in that fear of like, who's going to be calling me looking for that thing, or like something bad's going to happen to me because I didn't actually get it done when I said I was going to do it. I think a lot of our anxiety and stress comes from the things that we've left undone, unchecked. So
I believe the important lesson is also to understand that each and everybody of us still has those tasks, right? So I might look at Scott's life and say, okay, he's publishing this and that many books, he has all the structure, but I do not know what's happening inside of you. And obviously there is different tasks, different struggles. And if we overcome them, we not only feel good about ourselves, but we can use this momentum to then do other tasks that are also critical, that are also important, but we don't have this limiting factor anymore. But I think it is important to understand that Ismael has those tasks that he doesn't feel like, Scott has those tasks he doesn't feel like, and we all have them, and we can really try to work up them as early as possible throughout the day, throughout the week, to get them out of the way, to focus on the fun and exciting and creative tasks. Scott, I may want to use that a little bit as a segue, and we talked a little bit about habits and structure. And you also in your books talk about failure and your mindset around failure. And my first question I wanted to ask you personally is, what is the biggest failure that you encountered in your life?
Mm-hmm. There's probably quite a few. Yeah. But I think so. A lot of the failures that I encountered they appeared to be failures in the beginning, and maybe they were, okay. But from that also came something that I learned, right? And I'll think of an example in a second, but like whenever I failed at something, it was like, okay, well, yeah, I don't feel very good about that, but maybe there was a reason that I failed. And when I actually looked at it, I realized like, I could have avoided that failure if only I had done like A, B, and C, right? Instead of doing this, I went over here and I actually did something that contributed towards the failure. So again, I mean, the failure can be, sometimes people, lose their jobs, or they start up a company and it fails, right? And we look at these things as well. Sometimes we fail and that's it, and then we just maybe we go back to the way things were. But I think that you can't get to where you want to be unless you actually go through the failure first, and that's really a hard conversation because honestly, nobody wants to fail. Everybody wants to succeed. And a lot of times, like people actually see, if they see like you've built up a 7 or 8 figure business and it's doing great, and they're like, that people see the results, but they may not realize that you had 3 failed businesses before that. And I've had, I've started small businesses that have failed in the past before, and a lot of it was probably because of my own negligence, I think, and maybe not managing the books very well, not being organized, trying to do everything myself. And it all just, in the end, it all just imploded. And that was the result, was like, okay, well, I just lost a lot of money and I lost my business. And now I've got to start over, or I've got to start something new. But I think the biggest failure is in failing and not recognizing that you did fail, first of all, and looking at that and going, okay, well, if I had a second chance, what would I do differently? Right. So, and I think that's what we need to do, is we need to look at it and consciously decide that, first of all, forgive yourself. I mean, failure is something that's bound to happen, but you also just have to embrace it, because, if you end up losing your business, losing whatever it is, or you had maybe you had an outcome that you wanted to achieve and you didn't get there, right? So maybe you have to start over again. That's okay, because we can always start over again. Um, but I think we need to start from a new place of where, like, you've got to start with a new mindset as well, right? Because sometimes I feel because I just had a bad mindset, and in a lot of cases with like a lot of people I talk to, it always comes back to the mindset. It's like the mindset of um, you know, like, am I going to I don't know, take action today on something that I know I absolutely need to do, or am I going to just let it go and accept the fact that I'm probably not good enough for this. Um, I'm not going to make it, because then you start coming up with excuses, and your excuses actually end up fueling um, all of your bad habits per se, because your bad habits are looking really good when you're when you're starting to when you're on the decline. um, you actually will fuel that more, and that's where, like, a lot of people end up self-sabotaging themselves. So
Talking about self-sabotaging, and I believe it's also a mindset shift to understand that a failure can be a learning and a development, right? So you go one direction, you try, you run, and maybe it works out the first time, but for most of us it really does not. So you go for a second, for a third, and for a fourth trial, and then eventually it actually works out because you've learned a lot over the earlier attempts. And when you talk about self-sabotaging, another thought that comes to mind, because I believe you also talk about it, is limiting beliefs and how to overcome limiting beliefs in your mindset. And I believe, Scott, that you have a process of overcoming limiting beliefs. But maybe we can open up with, what is a limiting belief? How do you define that?
limiting belief is the belief that you're not going, like, you're just stuck in one place, right? Basically, like, um, this is what I learned, this is what I know, and I'm sticking with this process. And you can't tell me anything else, because I've already decided that this is the way it is. So we've already defined our reality as something that is never going to change. And that's actually leading back to the fixed mindset, right? A fixed mindset is stuck in limiting beliefs. These limiting beliefs are these are the things that you probably picked up when you were a child, and they were, whether, doesn't matter where you learned them from, but what matters is that you're still holding on to them. And we all know people who are well into their 40s, 50s, and older years, where they're still living out the identity that they had, like, from the beginning, And I think over time, if you want to overcome your limiting beliefs, which, again, limiting beliefs are just any beliefs that are keeping you stuck in one place, and you're unable to, get better, you're unable to change, right? That's really what it all comes down to. Is limiting beliefs are it's the anchor to change. They're holding you back. And they're hard to recognize, because we all have the tapes going on inside our head every day, and these are very subliminal messages. Like, not messages from out there. They're messages, that things that we picked up throughout the years and the decades, and we're not aware of, like, these tapes and everything that we're telling ourselves. Like, they're running all the time, right? So the reason that I mentioned earlier, just about, like, doing meditation, getting calm and still with yourself, the reason that's so scary is because you start to actually hear the tapes. Like, you can hear the voices going through your mind, and the self-doubt, the self-put downs, um, being critical of yourself, or listening to somebody else is criticizing you, and you're believing it, right? Because you realize, like, yeah, I really am no good, so everything he or she said about me must be true. But if you want to move beyond that, you need to reprogram your tapes. You need to create um, a new voice, right? And I think this comes down to creating the new identity for yourself. And identity is so powerful because we all have an identity, but it doesn't have to be the same identity. You don't have to be the same person throughout your lifetime. I mean, all of us are to a certain degree. Like 50% of our brain is malleable, right? It means like we can actually shape it and form it, and we can do amazing things, right? Maybe 50% of it's still just what it is, right? But that other 50% that we still have like the power to do whatever we want with, like that's just that alone, you can achieve anything. But you need to set yourself up for success. And this is why investing in your, we'll call it personal development and growth, whatever, but investing in your future is really like investing in yourself. And whether that means reading books, going to seminars or taking courses, whatever it is, like you need to decide, first of all, what is it that you need to learn? What is it that you need to listen to? And what is it that you need to start believing in order to take yourself to a place that you like? I'm really obsessed with getting to a level in life that I just never imagined possible. Like that's like everything. I'm just consumed by that, building that reality, right? Because when it happens, when I get there, I'm like, wow, like I never would have imagined this was going to happen. But actually, on reflection, you realize that at some point you did start imagining it. You just, and every day, like every day is one step closer, right, towards building that, like that reality for yourself. Every day is one step closer to creating a new identity. And I think identity is formed by, again, everything that, the way you're talking to yourself, everything that you're, of course, your beliefs are a big part of that. And there are some beliefs that we just will never change, right? I mean, that's just the way it is. But there are a lot of beliefs that are just negative beliefs that you can change, right? Like going from self-doubt to having like supreme confidence. I mean, I struggled with self-doubt many, many years. Still do some days. But I struggled with rejection, like being rejected by society, but rejected by people. And these things like are these are real fears, right? But a lot of the like the fear of being rejected was really like rejecting myself, and you will always reject yourself first before you give anyone else a chance to do that. But recognizing if that is the problem, like you can start to put things into practice so that just little by little you're turning the tables around so that you're no longer the victim. And this is actually just the last thing here. Like one of the reasons that we struggle to change is because we're stuck in victim mode. We're victims of our past. Or it's poor me. Why did this happen to me? And I've been there. Like I've been there too. I still am there sometimes. I find myself regressing on the past, wishing that I'd done things differently. But you can get past your your victim mentality and jump over to the other side of the fence. Now you've got a fighting chance because you're no longer allowing the victim to control your destiny. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to awaken to, is that to a certain extent, we're all stuck there. We're all feeling like, I never had a chance because, I was born into this family and this happened. And, my parents didn't treat me very well. And then my teachers didn't treat me well either. And then, that's the story you end up telling yourself. Well, the story you tell yourself is a story you end up living and creating.
And I think it really does help to overcome those limiting beliefs. And I would like to use that you say, this victimhood or looking back to the past, to cue a question: how much of a future driven or how much of a present person are you, Scott?
I would say now most of my reality, the things that I'm working for are very future driven. I would say like most of my thoughts are really based on like where do I want to be tomorrow? Where would I like to be a year from now? And what do I have to do to get there? And this really, this comes down to just setting your goals, right? Goal setting has always been something, actually, to be honest, even though I've gotten here because I had goals set, setting goals was always very scary for me because I was terrified of what happens if what happens if they don't come true, right? Yeah, nobody wants to believe in a dream, like go all in on something and then not have it, like have it fail, have it not come true. So for the longest time, I wouldn't set goals. I wouldn't write them down. I was even afraid to talk about them, right? But when we talk about like if you want to create a compelling future, well, you set a goal for yourself that is just like one of my new goals right now actually is to go to space. I know that sounds crazy. I'm even telling people about it. It's not so crazy nowadays because actually it turns out that we probably can if you have enough money, right? So it comes down to like, okay, well, it is possible that I can go to space. I believe I can. What do I need to do to get there, right? And it comes down to like, well, maybe I need a lot of money. It's like, okay, well, how do I get a lot of money? And I start to break down the steps of like what it would take to get there. And who knows, maybe in 5 or 10 years from now, we won't need tons of cash to go there. It might be more affordable, but you always look at the obstacles that are standing in your way, because what happens is we look at that obstacle as something that's insurmountable. And if you just say, oh, I can't do that because I need like a ton of money. Well, I just don't have it. And then that's it. You leave it. It's like, well, it's not that you don't have it. The question is like, and I'm just like, just to use a different example, maybe you need money for like a new startup. You want to start up a business. You've always dreamed of putting this together, but you're blocked by the obstacle of like, I don't have money. I'm poor. What am I going to do? Well, yeah, you may not have money, but what do you need to do to get it? How much do you need? And then you just have to start breaking it down. And when you actually break it down, you realize like there are small steps you can start taking. You don't have to jump like 20 steps ahead. It's always about the next small step, right? Every step taken is just getting you closer to that. Doesn't matter if you're saving $1 a day. It's better than spending $1 a day, right? So, and I'm just using my, getting to space on that like example. Well, I actually started breaking down the steps of everything I would need to do to make that happen. And, but the reason I set that as a goal is because it just seems so like out there, well, it is actually, but it just seemed like not a tangible reality. But then I started actually thinking about it more. And here's the thing, next thing I knew, I found myself on, SpaceX. I found myself on their website looking at the ships going, oh yeah, and starting to visualize like, what it would feel like in space and just starting to make it your own reality. And you can do this for anything, right? Anything at all. And that's why, like, I think it's great to surround yourself with, if you're building a visual collage, just surrounding yourself with these things. If you're reading, read a book on it, read like whatever it takes, talk to people about it, read books, take courses, listen to podcast interviews, but immerse yourself into the environment that is going to be supporting your goals and the future that you just feel like you really want. Because remember, a lot of people, like all of us, to a certain extent, we're still living in the past, right? And we're recreating the past every time we think about it. We start to get hooked on to things that never happened and then we start to think, well, if it never happened before, it's not going to happen in the future. So we've got to take control of that, build your own identity, and nurture that identity every day, right? And get really still with yourself and start to create a new set of tapes for yourself. And when I say tapes, I mean like the voices in your subconscious that are actually just like controlling the whole show. And we're not always going to be able to erase everything, but you don't have to either. You just have to take control of those thoughts in your head that are like holding you back. So
before I cue my next question, I want to give the personal note that we share this goal going to space. I believe it was like 10, 12 years back. I was in California and I was witnessing one, I believe, of the first test flights of the Virgin Galaxy, I believe it's called. And that was when it came to my mind as well. It was like, okay, sometime in the near midterm future, normal people will go to space. And it's something that fascinates me. It's certainly not on my, let's call it top 6 over there in my room. It's not this kind of priority, but it's certainly a dream. And I fully do agree, if you have it written out and if you have it somewhere, you immerse yourself, you do research on it, you find out, okay, what is the developments that are happening and when does it become feasible? Maybe today you need dollar amount N, and maybe it is feasible that in 10 years you need a dollar amount divided by 100, and this is a dollar amount that you and I can create by doing what we love. So I think it is helpful to have those goals and to be clear about them. And yeah, thank you very much for that elaboration, Scott. Another question, you talked about the past and you talked about being future driven. And I know that you also do talk about delaying gratification, and maybe we can use that and also talk about how much do you enjoy and create happiness for yourself in the present moment.
Yeah. So for me, the present moment, like let's bring it back to living a quality lifestyle. I used to eat really unhealthy, I think, so that contributed a lot to some health issues. But also just mentally, I was always fatigued, right? So part of my, I guess, call it my daily structure is exercise, very important. And I don't exercise every day, but I'm very athletic. So on the days when anybody who works out can attest, works out or runs or whatever it is you're doing, exercise is critical. And because I've been working out for a long, long time, there are a lot of days where I'm just like, I just don't feel like it today, right? And so, that becomes like the next day, and then a week later, you've put on quite a bit of weight, or I put on quite a bit of weight, and I realized, like, if I'd only been exercising every day this week, I would have felt a lot better, right? So feeling good on a day to day is just have to do a few things really well. Taking care of yourself, self-care. And again, this is something I've always struggled with, not taking care of myself to the point where, not that I'm not really like physically sick, but just I think mostly mentally, because when you're taking care of your health in terms of like exercise, eating really well, and I won't go into like like what a diet should look like. That's different for everybody, but I cut down on my sugar intake, and sugar, like, because I'm a sugar junkie and still am to a certain degree, but that just when I started cutting down on that by like 20%, 50%, 80%, it had a huge positive, big positive influence on just the way that I felt about my body. Taking supplements, things like that. So doing these things. And the third thing was relationships, connecting with people that are supporting you on this journey. And we all have struggles with relationships. Not every, not every relationship that you're in, or it could be just people you're working with. Not everybody is going to be, treating us fairly, so to speak, right? But that's okay, because if you're surrounded by, like, the people you are surrounded by, they're going to not just be able to support you, but I believe in the collective mindset, right? So if you're, you've probably heard this before, like, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. Well, that is definitely true. Or it could be 2 people or 3 people, but if you are spending a lot of time with people that are, they're on the same page as you are. You don't have to have the same goals or have the same mission, but if you do, that's even better. Great, because now you're working with a team, and your team is aligned. And this could be a family, could be your family that's aligned, people in your business, or just maybe people you're starting something new with. I don't know, like a new relationship. But when you're in alignment with people, like that is something that just you can't buy that anywhere, right? But you can create it by knowing, by I think intentionally knowing who are the kind of people that you want to connect with, right? Because that's another decision too, like knowing that, like having an avatar of somebody that, like this is the kind of person I really want to be friends with, and wow, you never know, like you might just end up meeting that person if if you start to really believe like that's the ideal. It just doesn't have to be like a romantic relationship. I mean, this can be like a business partner, it can be anything, but you know that you want to be surrounded by these types of people, and that way, by making it an intentional decision, you're not just letting it happen, by I guess by default, right? And I think that's why a lot of us end up floundering around and failing because life happens by default, and again, life shouldn't be happening to you. It should be or could be happening for you.
No, absolutely. Thank you very much for that elaboration. And I'm fully aware that I might open up a whole new conversation here. And we may or may not have a second conversation around that topic, talking about Japan. But when you talk about this collective mindset, Scott, I would be very interested, as you're based there for quite some time by now. Is there certain components of the Japanese culture in regard to a collective mindset that you either use for the techniques in your self-help books or that you are really attracted to by yourself? Is there something that you really like about this culture that you share through the work that you do with the world?
Yeah, so I worked in a lot of companies here, or I've been to a lot of companies where I've spent time working with, the employees, engineers, scientists, you name it. They're very group centric, right? So anybody who knows anything about Japan probably knows that everything you do, it's about the group, right? And you don't act outside of the group. Nobody's singled out. It's like everything that you're doing is part of that collective. And I think that like a lot of my, I guess, like not just my mindset, but I mean, whenever I'm looking to, build a team, for example, like I want there to be that like that collective mindset of people who are they're really into your mission, right? And I think, like, again, just going back to like the Japanese culture, like if you're in a company, the company shares the overall mission, and everybody's just aligned with that, right? And there's a strong level of support there as well. So if you know if I'm working in a company, for example, and I decide to I don't know, kind of go rogue and do something on my own, well, that group is probably going to decide that they don't want me to hang around anymore. They don't want me to belong to that group anymore because I'm not a group player. So I think that the group collective is something, if you can learn to formulate your own group, then you can build your own team. And here's the thing is that nobody should be struggling on their own, right? Because I think that nobody can, we can't make it by ourselves, right? And that's the thing is, like, I'm quite the loner, so I've always had it in my mind that I'm going to do everything myself. I'm going to, build the world, and I'm going to change this and that. But I always was, it was always just me. And I realized, like, that's actually not how the Japanese do it. The reason these companies are so successful is because they have groups and structure and all this. And it's like, well, there's a lesson there, because that means that if you're just one person trying to make a difference, and one person can, but what could you do if you actually if you were surrounded by people who were sharing your dreams, sharing your vision? and and that's just something that I really just like. That was something I actually loved about the culture. Sure, there are times when I felt like maybe it was too restrictive, or like if somebody in the group, for example, had a special talent, they probably feel like they shouldn't go outside of the group and express that they're a genius or special, or they have a better talent than the rest of the group, because that way, like, they're no longer part of the group. Now there's somebody, they're different, so, and sometimes you do feel that pressure to not venture outside, but to stay with the pack, right? So, yeah, I think that was where some of my conflict came, because um, I'm I don't know, a bit of a lone wolf, but also a bit of a rebel too, where I'll try new things, and it may not always, it may not always be in alignment with what other people, you know, I don't know, like perceive as being the right thing or not. So yeah.
It sounds very alike. I can hear myself talking for certain components. So thank you very much for sharing that, Scott. And again, I think I have a lot more questions. I have a lot more topics that we can indulge at some point. Maybe we do choose to go for a second round if we enjoyed it and if our audience enjoys it. But maybe for today, we can come to a close, a slow one. And there is 3 questions I ask each and every of my podcast guests. But Scott, before we go there, we've talked a lot about mindset, mastery, I want to say it. We talked about structure. We talked about failure. Is there something that comes to mind that we didn't touch today that you would really like to shine light on in today's conversation?
Mm. So I've listened to a lot of stories about, let's see, people who talked about intuition. I'm a firm believer in intuition and just following your calling. We kind of talked about this a little bit, but I didn't go too deep into it, and I'll try not to do that now. But um, I've listened to other stories of people like whether it's Kobe Bryant or Hugh Jackman and Jim Carrey, for example. You look at a lot of the stories, like they talk about the events that happened in their life, like that actually led to their, call it, success, right? Um, and there is I believe that, like, there's a universal power that's really at work here, and I think part of, like, a lot of the things that I've been focused on, like mindset and mastery and all of these things, like what it's really pointing towards is that an energy field. I think if you watch Star Wars, they probably call it the Force, but we can call it, call it like it's an energy field, where in quantum physics they talk about this a lot. And like I'm not an expert on quantum physics, so I won't go there. But that's where a lot of the creative energy is actually, like, that's where a lot of it exists, and um, it's become an area of fascination with me, because it just opened up a whole new, like doorways. So here's how I visualize life in general. Okay. Um, you walk into a darkened room, right? In the room, there's a door. You go through the door and there's 10 more. And then you go through one of those doors, and then you've got doors upon doors upon doors. And just imagine yourself standing in front of this room with, I don't know, 1,000 doors. Every one of those doors leads you to a different life, right? Now, everybody's made decisions in their lifetime, where if they went this way, well, they just went through one door. They went this way, they went through another door. So I'll give you an example, okay? You're walking on the street, you have a decision. You go left or right. You turn left, and you're about halfway down the street. You meet a man who, you meet a man on the street, and he, I don't know, offers you a job, for example, right? That job leads you into meeting a lot more, meeting new people, getting into, like, maybe you meet someone in the company, you get married, and you have a life, and da 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 da. You turn right, you meet somebody else, and they don't offer you a job, but they offer you something else, whatever, So that takes you in a different direction. The difference is you turned one direction instead of the other, but both of them are 2 completely different doors. And within, like, that door, then you've got multiple doors as well, because every person you meet, and by the way, where I'm going with this is every person you meet is a new doorway. right? Because that person that you meet, and this can be somebody like, like in your, I don't know, in a company, just like a stranger on the street, but that person can, show you something, teach you something. You have an experience with that person. Maybe you become really good friends. But these are the I guess like a lot of the synchronicities that we talk about. A lot of it all has to do with like the I guess the directions that we're taking, the decisions that we're making, are all leading to someplace. And that's why it's important to look at a decision as like there's no such thing as a bad decision. I know it feels that way when we don't get the outcome that we were expecting. And that's where failed expectations come into play. In Fail Big, I talked about failed expectations where, you know, um, I expected to get this, but I didn't. Well, that doesn't mean it's the end of it. It just means that you weren't ready for it, maybe. But there's always other doorways. There's millions of them, and you're not going to be able to go through all of them in this lifetime. So I won't get into my, beyond that. I mean, who knows? But I think that I just want everyone to keep in mind that this is such a creative journey in the sense that, I mean, like if you think of yourself as a beam of light, and you're coming into each day as you're that beam of light, and that beam of light's just attracting you, like you're just like absorbing everything, like you're pulling it towards you, right? And this is why if you can start to visualize like visualize yourself as in like if you could have the ultimate lifestyle, the ultimate dream, what would that be? And that's one of the big questions, really. Like when I'm setting big goals, or I decide to go after something that I think seems impossible, it usually comes back to like, well, like I visualize myself as like being this person. I want to be that person. And in order to get there, I need to take certain steps, and just knowing what some of those first steps are is going to be leading you into that direction, right? Who you're going to meet along the way, who knows? What opportunity is going to come across, like who knows? But don't overthink it, right? Just you're that beam of light. You're moving forward, and everything that you need in the moment to make that happen, it's all coming towards you. And be patient. And when it doesn't happen when you want it to, and this is something that every day I struggle with this, because I want things to happen right now. I want that, the contract for the next book, I want it on my desk today, and it doesn't happen. It's like, okay, just breathe in, and it's going to happen, or it's not. But regardless, like you have to let that go, because we can't control everything either, so.
Now, to have this clear vision to shine light on particular areas, let's call it, and be open for those encounters and open a few doors that you may not have thought opening, I think helps tremendously. Thank you so much for that elaboration as well, Scott. And as you are an author, one question that I have very personal interest in, but I'm sure also my audience, is what are books that you frequently gift other than your own ones?
Probably one of them would be The Alchemist. The Alchemist is one of my favorite books. The other one is Awaken the Giant Within. It's a Tony Robbins book. I think I probably mentioned that earlier in the show. It's been out for about 30 years, but still very applicable to today. Like it's still one of some of the earlier work that Tony did was just very powerful. And this one, the probably the third book. Let's see, Jack Canfield's The Success Principles. Really good book as well. I probably have a few dozen actually, but those are a few of the. And the last one would be The Artist's Way by Julia Cameron.
Wonderful. We will start with those four. I will, of course, make sure to link them in the podcast description. And yeah, I would be interested to be in touch and to exchange book recommendations, let's call it. And Scott, being in touch, if our audience, and I'm sure there's people who are interested to get to know more about yourself, how can people reach out? Where do they find your books? And yeah, how can people engage?
Sure. So you can find me on social media, Instagram. We're building that page out a lot these days. So you can find me Scott Allan, hashtag Scott Allan author on Instagram. We're currently revamping the website, but that will be under the domain name scottallanpublishing.com. And you can also send an email to scottallan at scottallanpublishing.com. And I respond to all the emails.
Certainly he does. Thank you very much. And I will, of course, make sure to link all those socials as well. And yeah, Scott, that leads me to the final-ish last three questions, because we never really know where they take us. But the first one would be, what influenced and motivated you over the past week?
Over the past week, I was influenced by. Let me think about that, because a lot happens in week by week, and sometimes nothing happens. But I was influenced by honesty. I think just having some really good conversation with people, honest conversations, and heart-to-heart conversations, just made me, open up. A lot of sometimes I'm a very closed person, so I'm having those heart-to-heart conversations with people. It just starts to open up a lot of the things, like, that I've been burying, and just helps me to become more vulnerable. So which is a scary thing, but I think it's also very necessary for growth.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for sharing that, Scott. And the next question would be, who are your mentors, or whom do you look up to?
Hmm. One of my mentors is, let's see, Tom Bilyeu. Tom Bilyeu runs Impact Theory, and he's just done some amazing work with his company, Impact Theory, and he and his wife Lisa. She has her own show as well, but Tom just has such a great interviewer, and I've learned so much from just watching the interviews on his show. Always been a dream of mine to be on the show myself, and so Tom is listening. I hope I'll get there someday. But no, but I mean, I just love um, he's just very just very direct with his questions, and you can tell he's just always thinking things through. So he's one of my mentors. I mentioned Tony Robbins as well, but I also think that I've uh, always been influenced by Muhammad Ali. Actually, was like one of my greatest heroes as well. Again, just because he always had that mind, like that winning mindset, even when it seemed like the odds were insurmountable. And Kobe Bryant as well. Like I just love some of our like sports heroes, because it isn't the fact that they're sports heroes. It's like, how did they get there to begin with, right? And when you actually look at the it's not just like it's the mindset, but it's the grit and the determination. And those are just some traits that I look for in people, because they just have this unstoppable um like pursuit to not just to win. I mean, that is a lot of it, but um they can't be beaten. Like, they cannot be defeated even when they go down. Like, they might stay down for a bit, but they're coming back at you again. And just like, and I think that was actually, I have a book called Undefeated, and a lot of the concepts for that book actually came out of like just studying people like like say like famous people, say like famous people who made it, like not say the famous people, but people who uh they started out with nothing, and over the course of 10 or 20 years they actually achieved like a level of success that a lot of people can only dream of. But it's not that we can't do the same thing, it's just that they had that, like the grit, the determination, just a level of tenacity that they absolutely had to succeed no matter what. So,
certain traits that we can certainly look up to. Thank you very much for sharing that, Scott. And that leads me to the last and final question, and that's a rather hypothetical one. So, Scott, I would actually like you to imagine to travel in space all by yourself for quite some time. And you're traveling for a few months or even a couple of years. And at some point, you meet a human-like species. And I call that question the three truths. And you can only communicate three facts or three truths about humanity that this human-like species will process before they understand if they want to get to know humanity or not. What do you tell them?
that's a difficult one. Three truths about humanity, and they have to take these three truths away from our conversation. Well, it may not be a conversation, but all right. First one would be we have a lot to learn, like as a species, and we have a lot to learn, and we have a lot to learn from from the aliens. So that'd be the first thing. Secondly, is that let's see. Yeah, okay. I believe that. Let me just think about this for a second. So I'm going to go off the rails for a little bit here. I have a belief that, like, okay, Earth in and of its whole. I mean, we have a lot of life on Earth, and I think that billions of years ago, whatever happened, however life was formed, biologists would probably disagree, but I think that we were placed here by something that it was probably alien based to begin with. And maybe that's, maybe if I were to meet these, like an alien in space, I'd probably want to ask, I don't know if it'd be a truth, but it would be like a question of like, you know, are we connected? I guess is what I want to really ask them. Like, how are we connected? Because I think that out there somewhere, if there is alien life, and there probably is, and the reason I say that is because humankind, we've done some amazing things, but I just can't believe that we're the most intelligent species in the universe, right? There's got to be something more. There's going to be something bigger out there. So I think that one of the truths that I would probably say to the human being would be like, we're seeking, like we're constantly seeking for more. And I don't know if there's a third thing, but it would be that we're waiting. Like we want to make contact. We want to learn from you, but we may not be ready yet, and that could be the case as well. So, all right. I hope that answered your question. I probably could have gone off on a different a different story there, but that's actually an idea that really excites me when I start to talk about other life out there, because I think it just comes back to like the whole potential. Like there's so much potential with what we can accomplish that we've barely even broken the surface. I mean, it's not even we're just beginning, right? So and we're not going to be able to figure it all out in this lifetime. So anyway, thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Scott. And I think there is no right and wrong. There's only right answers to that question. And yeah, it certainly does trigger certain thoughts that we can take somewhere and discuss either in person or in a round two. And with that, Scott, I want to say thank you for being a guest on the Just Another Mindset podcast. And if there's any final comments, remarks, or words you have for the audience, it's all yours.
Just the one thing I would say is never give up. Even on those hard days, take a break, take time out. But when you're ready, get back in the game. Keep pushing forward.
Thank you so much, Scott. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
If you enjoy and learn from the Just Another Mindset podcast, please make sure to share this episode with a friend or two and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcast. And if you want to receive a brief overview of what made me think over the past week and join like-minded individuals, you may want to sign up to my weekly newsletter. It is easy to sign up. It is super easy to unsubscribe again. You will get information on the newest podcast episode, and you will also get an overview of the content, books, and podcasts mainly, that I am consuming, and I evaluate what I've learned over the past week. You will also get your weekly dose of optimism, because you will receive the Smile News with 7 things that went right this week. And finally, you will get access to all my speaker notes that you can use to follow exercises and answer questions discussed in the podcast. Just follow the link in my bio to sign up for my newsletter, and I'm already excited to see you on the other side. If there is any future topic or guest that you would like to hear more about on the Just Another Mindset podcast, please let me know by leaving a comment on YouTube or sending a mail directly to contact@ismaelwondergarten.com. And if nobody told you lately, be reminded that you are worthy, you matter, and you can achieve anything.